Let's start with a very interesting story from Danish protest pig. Dapper Dan fails to think things through. Not sure if this is malicious compliance or petty revenge. I graduated uni a few years back and immediately started looking for a job in my chosen field, marketing. Marketing entry-level roles were thin on the ground, so when I found a role which was hybrid of marketing with sales support, I took it. The company was a medium-sized business which specialized in recruitment, contractor hiring, and headhunting. They also subcontracted work for a recruitment technology provider, which matched up perfectly with one of my other passions, technology. I absolutely loved the role. I got to do all parts of the marketing and sales lifecycle. I got to work with suppliers, event organizers, clients, staff all across the company, meet new people, and do really exciting things. I had two managers, the one who managed the sales team and the one who managed marketing. The marketing manager was a kindred spirit. The sales manager was old school sales. An arrogant and headstrong late 40s man who lived for making deals and boasting about them. Shiny-shoed, silver-tongued. I'll call him Dapper Dan. We were not friends. For about 18 months, things went swimmingly. I'd do marketing half the time, then divide the rest of the time between sales, support, and billable work. Billable was building custom careers/job sites to host the recruitment system front end. A steep learning curve, but with the help of some web dev friends, I got pretty familiar with simple site builds. Being tech-aligned meant I was always looking digital first, bringing the company into the age of social media, SEO/SEM, website optimization, and multi-channel marketing. Dapper Dan sneered at such things. He saw digital as a waste of money. However, we were always able to justify the spend on digital by offsetting the billable website work. The marketing manager eventually moved on to bigger and better things. Rather than promote me or hire in a replacement, the company moved the marketing responsibilities to Dapper Dan. Dapper Dan's changes were immediate and far-reaching. He removed the digital budget. He required that 50% of my time would be sales support to better enable the sales team. He incorporated the billable work with his own team's revenue. He rewrote my annual objectives to align purely with sales targets rather than marketing. When I voiced my objections, he took me aside for a friendly chat and told me if I didn't like it, I could always leave. Naturally, I went and complained extensively to the departed marketing manager over drinks. After listening sympathetically for 45 minutes, she held up a hand, said, "Stop," and shared some life advice. Each job pays you twice. You get your money now, that's your wage. You also get experience now. That's how you get paid in the future. South. Are you still getting paid? Yes. Are you still learning? No. Figure out how to keep learning or leave. Taking the advice to heart, I busted my ass for the next year. I worked on digital outside of office hours. I made friends with the tech providers' support and dev teams. I went to developer group meetups, attended conferences, studied for and acquired industry qualifications. I joined the National Marketers and Digital Marketers Group. I dug through blogs, articles, emailed people, took every opportunity to cross-skill, upskill, to learn. And I sat with a smile on my face in the sales meetings as Dapper Dan delegated dumb-do work to me so his team of sycophants could make the company's growth figures look spectacular. Spectacular they were, to the point that the company was acquired, and Dapper Dan betrayed me. You see, managers have the discretion to assign a pool of shares to high-performing staff. The shares have no real value and can't be traded, but in the event of a management buyout, they would suddenly have value, and quite a lot of value. Dapper Dan felt it appropriate to reward every salesperson in his team with a generous parcel of shares. As a support person, I would not be the beneficiary of such kindness. I'd had a verbal agreement with the previous marketing manager that the pool would be shared across the entire team, so was pretty shocked to discover I'd been excluded from the pool. I queried him on it, per the previous agreement, and he said, verbatim, "Well, an verbal agreement is only worth the paper it's written on. You don't make any sales, you haven't built the business, you don't get a cut. If you didn't like it," he reiterated, "you're welcome to leave." That is exactly what I decided to do. Except I didn't tell him. The way the contract handover works in this instance is that all staff cease employment with Company X on one day. The following day, they commence employment with Company Y. Annual leave is paid out and begins to reaccrue at the new employer. Other arrangements, salaries, long service leave and length of service, may be transferred to the new employer. About 6 weeks before the handover, Dapper Dan passed me my new contract. I waited a week, came back with some enthusiastic queries on the new benefits, which took him 2 weeks to follow up. I quietly registered a domain name and parked it, then spun up a WordPress instance and started building a personal blog. 3 weeks away from drop date, everyone's frantically running around getting all the deals as close as possible to closing, and employment contracts are the last thing on his mind. I go back to him, I tell him, I have a couple more things I need to check out, and I'll email them through to him before I sign it. I spend a few more nights throwing together a bunch of blog articles relating to recruitment technology. How to articles, that kind of stuff. Many of my own installation notes. A week passes, I fire off a couple of really complex questions around the transfer of benefits. He obviously forgets about them, then, in the week of the handover, catches heat from the HR team about the outstanding contract and pulls me into a meeting room to berate me about not having signed the new contract. I explain I'm waiting on his feedback on those specific points before I'll commit, that I don't want to be disadvantaged moving into the new role. Call out the lack of a share option as an example. Clearly frustrated, he drops the words I've been waiting for. If the signed contract is not on my desk on Friday, don't bother coming into the office Monday. He paused for dramatic effect and reiterated, I mean it, you won't have a job. I replied that I completely understand and that I'll have everything he needs on his desk by close of business Friday. On Friday afternoon, Dapper Dan leaves the office early to attend his normal client networking visits, which typically involve long lunches and alcohol. At 4:45 p.m., I save the final set of forecasting and reporting to the share drive, send an email to the IT team, passing over access to the marketing LastPass account, which contains the global database of usernames and passwords for all digital assets, including client sites, an Excel workbook containing my reporting macros, and the location of all my documentation. I redirect my phone to Dapper Dan's desk number, lock my laptop, and leave it on his desk along with my ID card. Over the weekend, I push my personal website live and add my contact details to my LinkedIn profile, switching it to actively searching mode. I figure my holiday pay will cover me for a couple of weeks of downtime before I have to go diving back into the workforce. On Monday, I'm enjoying a long walk in the spring sunshine with my dog, who's incredibly happy that his human has not disappeared down the driveway at 0720 per normal. We stop for coffee at a local cafe, and my phone begins to ring. It's one of the sales drones at Old Company. I ignore it and thoroughly enjoy the freedom of being able to amble through a park without anywhere to be. The phone buzzes another 8 or 10 times by the time I get home. The poop has well and truly hit the windmill. I check my voicemails, ignoring those I know from my previous employer and returning the phone calls of 2 ex-clients to let them know that my contract has ended and to check in with Dapper Dan for work in progress, or contact the technology provider for support requests. Shortly afterwards, I got a call from a bemused contact who works at the technology provider who's been fielding support calls that I'd normally handle. He listens with increasing interest as I explained the situation, then tells me he'd call back shortly. 10 minutes later, he's back with the head of product on the line, asking about my lunch preferences. She arranges to meet me at a nearby Thai place. Over a delicious red duck curry, she cheerfully describes the wonders of a career as a contractor. She also mentions the day rates for highly qualified, industry-certified staff, mentioned that tech provider were really struggling to find such staff, and gives me the number of a recruiter who may or may not have been on tech supplier's preferred supplier list. I call the recruiter on the way home. Meanwhile, my collection of voicemails from Dapper Dan was growing by the hour as he came to grips with the breadth of the problem that he'd generated. At some point in the late afternoon, HR must have clicked to what had happened, and I received a polite SMS from the personal number of the regional HR directory asking if I was available for a quick chat. I called through and discussed the options presented to me by Dapper Dan on Friday, and that I felt I had no option but to follow his instructions. They probed for more information, and it became apparent they were unaware that Dapper Dan had pulled an ultimatum without first engaging HR. They then informed me that to benefit from the sale of my shares, I would need to transfer to the new company and remain in their employment for a full year. When I explained that I had no such share options, there was a full 4-second silence. It transpires that this too was not adequately communicated to HR. I mentioned that I'd appreciate it if Dapper Dan could discontinue his voicemails to me, as I found them unprofessional and had no intent of recommencing employment under his management. We ended the call politely. I wished them all the best and regretted the conversation had to happen under such circumstances. My contract for tech provider came through via the PSL agency at 11 p.m. that evening and was signed and returned the following day. I was deployed to client site that Wednesday, post-departure. I met up with one of the old IT team at a conference 3 months after it all went down. He was ecstatic to fill me in on what had happened. The first notice anyone got of it was the service desk asking who they should route my LastPass account to and why I'd be passing it around. One of the techs came up to my floor to find me, then found an empty desk. Asked around for where I'd moved to and no one knew. That was the first call, from one of the sales drones trying to locate me. The tech went to Dapper Dan's desk and found my laptop with my ID and post-it note taped to it. He put 2 and 2 together, went back downstairs and checked the access logs and realized the last time I'd logged in was Friday. He then locked my account for security purposes and went to HR to check if there was a leaver form. HR checks, no leaver form, and a great big red cross next to employment contract received. HR calls Dapper Dan, who's not in the office. Dapper Dan says, "No, contract should be on my desk. It was on there on Friday. I'm out on the road at the moment. Give me till lunchtime and I'll sort it out." Obviously thinking that I'm grandstanding, starts to call me and leave messages, then gets progressively agitated as he realizes I'm not coming back. When he gets into the office, he can't find the contract either, so he goes to HR and explains what has happened. Says, "I have been stonewalling them and it's cool. He'll get it sorted. It's between me and him." HR says, "No, this is our thing now." And the HRD sends me the SMS. Shortly after my phone conversation, the HRD walks into a sales meeting and very abruptly pulls Dapper Dan out. They disappear into a meeting room where it may only be assumed that Dapper Dan was required to spell out exactly what had occurred and address the comments that I had made. I suspect he came completely clean at that stage. Dapper Dan was subsequently reamed as only HR and senior management can ream a manager who's up. He was demoted, decoupled from marketing, his budget reduced by half, and a new, separate marketing function created. His team were collectively put under review and forced to carry out their own reporting, tracking, and metrics, which lacked the coherence and consistency that I'd been able to deliver. This reduced the capacity of the team. A couple of them left, and they missed out on some key deals. In the fallout, they completely dropped the ball on the client website builds. They went to market to try and find a resource who could fulfill these builds, and Dapper Dan was reportedly astounded to discover that experienced technical marketing staff are both hard to find and expensive to recruit. They were unable to fill the role, and the builds were taken back in-house by the tech provider, who now had an experienced resource to deploy: me. I ended up working on 3 of these at full utilization rate, which was paid by the new company. I'm pretty sure Dapper Dan would have seen the funding arrangements for these and would know my day rate, which is substantially higher than his. Much later as the sales lead, Dapper Dan had to bear the displeasure of his superiors for the full 12 months before he could claim his share payout. It would have been a really 12 months for him. He resigned within 2 weeks of the anniversary of the purchase, and the company enforced a 6-month notice period and another 12-month no-compete clause. Any benefit he would have received from the share payout would have been consumed over that 12 months, unless he switched industries or moved cities. Last time I saw he was on the job market. As for me, happily living the life of the contractor. I get paid for the hours I work and I work the hours I want. My old marketing manager is now VP of something at a large multinational. I've used her speech several times when giving young, frustrated staff career advice. TL, old school sales manager attempts to call my bluff. Hilarity ensues. It was a perfect revenge, which was executed flawlessly. By quietly preparing for his exit, OP ensured that Dapper Dan's actions backfired spectacularly, leading to Dan's downfall. It was a perfect example of calculated and strategic revenge. The next story from Gloobnib. Metrics. You get what you measure. This is really long, but it represents my crowning professional achievement in the Malicious Compliance department. I felt it best to keep the story intact and include each step of escalating malicious compliance. TLDR at the bottom. Back in the early 90s, 1989, I worked for a very large telephone company as a customer support representative CSR in their billing call center. My first day after completing the required 2 weeks of training, I received 4 customer commendations. The customer had to call back after we were through, ask for a supervisor, and say that I deserved to be commended. I received a total of 12 commendations in my first week on the job. This was unheard of. Most CSRs got maybe 2 to 3 a month. Not bragging, just stating that I was good at the job, and at only 18 years old, I really liked getting the positive attention for doing my job well. So my 30-day evaluation rolls around, and my supervisor takes me aside, and the conversation goes something like this. I will be G, SV will be my supervisor. SV. Gloob, you've received over 20 customer commendations in your first month. That is outstanding. Your attendance is perfect. You have never been late coming back from your breaks. She then shows me a printout with several columns of numbers, metrics, but with one of mine circled in red. There's only one problem. You are spending too much time in work state. G. Okay. What is work state and why is that bad? SV. Work state is when you make yourself unavailable for calls. You are only supposed to use it for restroom breaks or when the customer terminates the call before you can complete your work. It says here you are averaging over 70 seconds of work state on every call. That number should never be any higher than 20 seconds. G. Oh, well, the reason why is that once I understand the customer's problem and we agree upon a solution, I thank the customer for calling and then make myself unavailable while I do all the computer work needed to fix their problem. SV. Well, see, we can't have your metrics so far outside the realm of what every other CSR does. Just keep the customer on the line while you do the updates so that this metric looks as good as your other metrics. G. That doesn't make any sense. The customers really appreciate that I am able to quickly understand their problems and am able to get them fixed quickly. You are asking me to take up more of their time when it isn't needed. SV. I know, sweetie, but please, I don't like having to explain to my boss why your metric is so outside the norm. G. Yeah, okay, I guess. For the next 30 days, I kept the customer on the line while I completed every aspect of the call. I would then thank the customer, hang up, and then place myself into work state, doing absolutely nothing but staring at the second hand of my watch for exactly 20 seconds. Then I would take the next call. Fast forward to my monthly review at 60 days. SV. Gloob, I see that your work state number is now 20 seconds, which is good. But see this number here? You can see that your average call time is now just over 310 seconds. We really don't want to see that number above 300 seconds. G. You told me not to let the customer hang up until I was finished doing the work. SSV. I know, but see if you can maybe work a little bit faster. It's only 10 seconds per call. I know you can do it. G. Yes, I will make sure that number is not more than 300 next month. SV. That's the spirit. For the next 30 days, I made sure that every single one of my calls took up exactly 5 minutes. As in, if the customer just needed to be transferred to another department, I would put them on hold for 4 minutes and 45 seconds, then come back on the line and say, "Transferring you now." I kept a stopwatch with a lap timer set up so that I would know exactly when my 5 minutes were up. Then I would go into work state for 20 seconds. Then I would take the next call. Time for the 90-day review. SV. Okay, I'm not sure what exactly is happening here, but I see your productivity is really starting to plummet, and we've noticed you haven't had a commendation in over a month. Gee, I'm not sure I understand. My work state and my average call handling time are both within the expected values. I can see that you track the number of calls each day as well. What is the expected range for that metric? SV gets a strange look on her face. Realization is dawning. We want to see everyone averaging at least 100 calls a day. Gee, but I'm averaging close 110. What is the problem? SV. In your first 2 months, you were taking over 130 calls a day. Gee, but I'm still within your expected metrics, correct? SV. Yes, but we already know you can do better. G. Okay, maybe I don't understand how this is calculated. Are all calls included in all metrics? SV. Actually, no. If a call lasts under 15 seconds, we assume it is a transfer or escalation, and it doesn't get included in either your work state or average call times. But it is still included in the total calls metric. That's why it seems like we are asking you to take more calls in a day than is possible. The transfers don't take any time to complete, but still get included in your total calls. Gee, okay. I will see what I can do to increase my total calls per day. So, for the next 30 days, same drill as last month. Every call takes me exactly 5 minutes to complete, followed by 20 seconds in work state. Only now, I kept a notepad next to me and kept tick marks for every call I handled. When I got to my expected 100 calls for the day, every single call that came in after that, I would immediately transfer to the supervisor escalation line, not even bothering to ask the customer for their phone number or why they were calling. The line was supposed to be reserved for irate customers or other issues that were beyond our authority to deal with. But unless I logged into the customer's accounts, the supervisors had no way to tell who escalated the call. I did this exactly 100 times each day at the end of my shift. When I got to 100 of these calls, I logged out of the ACD, call tracking system, and would go hide in the bathroom or break room for about 20 to 30 minutes until the end of my shift. At my next evaluation, day 120, it was my supervisor and the vice president for the entire call center, 3 levels up, who were at the table. They had the metrics sheets for each of the last 4 months spread out in front of them. They handed a copy to me. VP, S has informed me of the previous conversations you've had with her. She also informs me that every time you discussed a specific metric, the next month that metric would be exactly the minimum number required. Nothing more, nothing less. She also informed me that at your last meeting, you were requested to increase your average number of calls per day. Gee, that is correct. Did I not achieve the goal this month? VP, you exactly doubled the number of calls to 200 per day. Nobody has ever taken 200 calls in a day, let alone average that over a full month. In fact, I had the IT staff go back and pull the metrics for the last 2 months. Not only are your averages for each metric exactly the minimum acceptable value, every single day is exactly that value. That is simply not possible. I believe you have somehow hacked into our ACD system and have modified the tracking entries for yourself. S. Gloob, I'm honestly not sure this is going to work out. Aren't you happy? G. Honestly? Not really, since we started focusing on metrics. Sorry, this is too long already. I'll leave out the drama over the ACD vendor, Rockwell Collins, having to fly someone in to try to find out how I was hacking their system to do this, in the popular culture sense of the word. Their threats of termination, The ultimate involvement of our union steward, or the final screw you I left behind on my last day. On second thought, that deserves its own post. The mods deleted my follow-up in this sub, so repost it over to R Petty Revenge. That story is located here. Anyway, I lasted about 4 weeks after that. Just enough time for me to start looking for another job, and for me to give my 2 weeks' notice once I found it. I've matured significantly since I had this job. Honestly, I now feel bad for just about everyone, including the customers that I undoubtedly pissed off there at the end. But I never forgot a very important business lesson that I still use when managing employees today. You get what you measure. But are you measuring the right things? TL. DR. As a telephone CSR, I went from being the rookie all-star that the customers loved to a jaded malicious compliance asshole in 4 short months. All because of a misguided focus on BS metrics and not on the most important metric of customer satisfaction. The malicious compliance was executed flawlessly. By adhering strictly to the ridiculous metrics, OP exposed the absurdity of focusing on arbitrary numbers over actual customer satisfaction. The calculated, exact execution of every task made a strong statement, perfectly executed.